Everybody, for another Riftbound 101 episode. We're on episode 10, and today it's a bit of a mixed episode because there's two things I want to cover. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the regional qualifier in Houston that just happened, and talk a little bit about the stream, the event. I wasn't there, I was at home watching, and competing in skirmishes, so it was a bit of a different environment for me, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's super interesting to talk about that is relevant to the meta episode from last week, that's relevant to card evaluations that we're going to be doing today. And the second part is going to be talking about the Fury cards that are in Spiritforged. And so that's going to be the plan for today, more so than an in-focus episode. In particular, I want to talk about big takeaways regarding top heroes or legends and what's happening with the meta currently. And then we're going to go through the origins and origin proving grounds legends to talk about what are the archetypes of red that exist currently. Then we're going to talk about the Spiritforged Fury Legends, and then we're going to talk about all the new Fury cards one by one. So it's going to be a bit of a longer episode probably, and figuring out, are they competitive with cards from Origins that are doing similar things? Are they opening up new avenues for deck building? And lastly, I want to talk about a couple of cards that I'm excited to play with or to make decks with that I think are really cool and offer new opportunities for Fury. So the regional qualifier, I think, in terms of like production value, has been an incredible, boon for the game. The folks who were doing casting, folks like Casanova and Barrett Bryant, were really strong, external to the Riftbound design team. And then we had Patrick Sullivan, Aaron Barrich, and Frank Scarin, who were fantastic. I loved Aaron Barrich's comment and insight about like Kaisa matchups. So if you have a chance and you're interested in improving at the game and especially seeing a lot of Kaisa gameplay, but not only, I would recommend just going on the Riot channel and watching the 2-day streams. You're going to have about like 15 plus hours of content of high level play to like understand some of the tricks that you can come up with. And I think that's like really the highlight for me is the production quality, the level of polish for a first NA competitive event looked fantastic from the audience side, so that's always a pleasure. And I'm gonna like tell you, if you don't want to know what happened in the tournament, you can kind of skip forward down below to the chapter heading for the Fury Legends themselves. I'm gonna try to spoil as little as possible for the tournament because I'm gonna be talking about it in the next couple of minutes. So you're forewarned. I'm gonna be like spoiling who won and what happened. So one of the interesting things based on the meta discussion that we were having last week is that Kaisa settled in terms of day one offerings around 33%, which is roughly what we were seeing from skirmish nights like a week back. And then you had some smattering of Master Yi, Annie, and then things get a little bit dicey. So if you look, these are the conversion rates for day one, day two, so heroes that stuck around. Kaisa went from 33% of the meta share to 42%, although that's something like I think when I did the math, it was like a 7% retention rate. Master Yi went up slightly. Annie is really the star. So to field 1/3 of the decks that Kaisa has on the field and come away with a little bit less than half means that the deck is overperforming in that matchup. And then you had some like surprises, like MF Aurora was highly present. And then basically everything after that settled to a couple of Teemos, one Victor, one Yasuo, one Darius, and I'm pretty sure one Lee Sin, one Volibear, and nothing else. The real, I think, letdowns that have been popping up are Ari, 63 decks day one, 0 decks day two, and Set, 56 decks day one and 0 day two. I think Saviges was there. I don't know if Colin Kaiser was, but I would imagine he was. And aside from that, there's a couple of takeaways. So Set had very strong showings at CCS and SCG a couple weeks back, and people were talking about how Set and Annie were like the rising stars. Well, it turns out that Set does much less well into a more open field, where Kaisa is popular and the deck is effectively just like made to tax Kaisa's removal with like um, recycling your or like saving your units and deflect costs. But the one thing that is pretty evident is that Set doesn't deal as well into an open field that is less predictable and somehow sometimes just won't care about the way that it plays. In particular, I'm going to be curious, but it feels to me like the Annie matchup is more difficult for Set than the Kaisa matchup is. So there's that. And then Lee Sin was sort of a like late game build that was playing Deadpool Predator but not Aurora, and Volley was playing an Aurora build. And I think the top Garen was also on Aurora. And then, there's some other stray decks like the Yasuo, which I think is like the most budget top 62 deck I've ever seen, around like $70. Fantastic stuff. The Victor build that got through for damn, I can't remember who was piloting it. Really had some novel tricks and was running some non-standard cards like Call to Glory, even though the deck doesn't run buffs, just to have that +3 might. So there's a lot of stuff, but nominally what you can see is this really shook out to being a Kaisa, Master Yi, Annie, and MF tournament at the start of day 2. And very quickly, that changed to being an Annie tournament. So top 8, you had 4 players on Annie, 2 on Yi, 2 on Kaisa, and I want to shout out George G and Alan ZQ were playing, I think, fantastic games. In particular, the Alan ZQ Diwali game is spectacular to watch in the day 2 stream, and Alan is the former Legends of Runeterra world champion, where he won with a Sivir and Akshan deck back in the day, like a couple years ago. So already you see sort of like a different top 8 than you would be expecting. MF got completely knocked out despite having a reasonable showing in this. And we really are on the cusp of like a meta where you can either get through with Master Yi and extremely late game units, or you get in with cheap removal and accelerate units. That's really like Red's calling card right now, and why I think it was important to talk about the Houston qualifier before I get into the Fury cards. The Fury cards have lean removal, they have some amount of card draw in Void Seeker and Kaisa, and then you just get like efficient ways of playing it. And when you move to the top 4, this becomes even more relevant, as Kaisa was completely knocked out of the top 4. We had an Annie matchup and a Master Yi matchup, and spoilers again for like the next sentence, Annie wins, right? So Diwali is the winner, and we're kind of entering a moment where, and I think it was a clean 2-0 sweep against Larg, so you're getting into a moment where like it's clear that the assertive decks that can play around other decks are much more reliable right now, like assertive strategies and tempo strategies over like strategies that have, like slow playing answers. So some of the key takeaways for this, Kaisa remains the most played deck, and it does convert well into top cuts, but at the highest end, it is not winning. So make of that what you will. If you are on Kaisa, you might have noticed that, for example, the price of Icathian Rain has been going down and down and down because it's not needed in as many copies, and Kaisa is getting less popular. Set totally disappeared in day 2, and there are some potential reasons for this that I don't want to make empirical claims yet. The conversion rate is either really bad into Annie, or more people just aren't comfortable piloting it at that level yet, even with testing. So you're only getting a handful of Set players, and it's not clear which version of Set was brought. And then Annie is just the highest placing legend. It has top 8 and top 4 dominance, and it wins the tournament. It also has like within its own like amount of decks that it brought to day 1, it has the highest conversion rate that sticks around. So not like to the field in general, but within itself, which entails that Annie is just like the top deck currently. And I'm careful to not say top tier 0 or tier 1. these decks can rotate based on teching, and we're still like a month or two out of Spiritforged, although we're going to start seeing Spiritforged gameplay in China very soon, and I think that's going to change a lot of stuff. So what I want to do with that in mind is I want to talk about, the lay of the land for Fury Legends going forward for the next set, and kind of what's available currently and what's going to be opened up by the new Legends, and whether or not there's some competition. All of this is going to be highly speculative. For reference, I come from Magic drafting, so I do a lot of card evaluation, and especially early on in the set, I feel relatively comfortable like gauging cards. But I am not like currently competing at regional qualifiers, so take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm mostly interested in seeing what kind of cards are going to open up new avenues, and what kind of cards I'm going to be on the lookout for, and archetypes that I think are going to slot well into the set that's coming up. There is a high chance I will be wrong, and even the best players in the world will be quite wrong sometimes about card evaluation. So take everything with a grain of salt, and this is just for fun. So I want to start off with Annie, right? Because Annie is kind of on top right now. She's kind of hard to acquire because she's tied to the Proving Grounds box. Although my understanding is that the legends from the Proving Grounds box will be included inside of Nexus packs once Spiritforged launches, she's still going to be hard to acquire, and I imagine that the Spiritforged Nexus pack versions are also going to be somewhat expensive unless they're very plentiful. Largely because the Proving Grounds versions are non-foil, so there's going to be like an incentive to get these. Annie, I think, is like a really cool starting point because she doesn't particularly commit you to a game plan other than something that wants reactive spell mana or spell runes. So you have 2 runes that ready at the end of the turn. And this is quite different from Kaisa because Kaisa pays for rune costs, whereas Annie gets you more access to rune energy, right? So Annie is going to get better if we're going to see more spells that rely on open energy, whereas Kaisa will get more competitive if we see spells that are cheap but require some energy costs. And both of these are going to change very much in equity if there's a lot of deflect. And I really want to lead with that because Kaisa right now threads a very thin line in the metagame compared to Annie, right? She adds rune power that you use to play spells. So you want to play spells and you want to be like really lean on runes. Kaisa's counter deck right now is Set. And Set beats Kaisa more often than not, largely on the back of Fiora with Showstopper buff, which gives you deflect, or Kiana giving you deflect, or units being so big that you have to pump multiple spells. The effect is that Kaisa tends to play a lot of small cost, low rune spells, but deflect harms you greatly. And Acathian Rain is like the ultimate version of this, where you can just blow out your own runes if you're not careful, and you like then have no gas to do anything. The difference, I think, really between the 2 decks is that Annie is more comfortable playing like combat-based stuff, and you have things like Sneaky Deckhand to play to open battlefields and ride the winds with Vi, and you're playing like a very lean, sort of evasive game plan. Kaisa just plays like a lot of remove one card advantage, and the spoiler for this is there are a lot of units with deflect. Ornn has deflect, Jax has deflect, Irelia has deflect, Sivir has reflect. Sivir in particular has deflect on you also get to run Kiana. And then if you're playing Fiora, you're going to have Fioras and Kianas and Sivirs. There's just like a lot of it coming up in the next set. And so I'm going to be grading cheap removal spells that require Kaisa a bit lower today. And I also think Kaisa is going to move down in terms of potency rankings for the next season, unless there is a version of Kaisa that starts playing exclusively with spells that don't target enemy units, like your Cleaves. Volibear currently is home really to the Aurora deck, and that basically means that you're playing a very like rampy version with Iron Ballista, and then you start to play Auroras, and you just dump out big units like Predator and your 2 Volibears, and maybe like a Brainhear Thundersong or a Tryndamere if you're like feeling a bit more spicy. Now, what I do think is interesting for Volibear is that Volibear, kind of like Kaisa and kind of like Annie, will just get better over time as better 5-might units are printed in his colors. And he ramps you, right? So all you want are cheap units that have high might with certain conditions, and you're going to be able to ramp up very fast and play big units. So I actually think Volibear is probably going to increase in terms of equity a little bit, and I'm going to be like taking a specific look for him at units that are 5 might or more in the list that we're going to see, and that's pretty much it. Darius, in a similar boat, I think as more cheap units are printed or cheap spells, you're going to get more uses out of Legion. I think Darius is reasonably solid. Both of his champion cards are really good. Darius Trifarian wants you to play a lot of cheap spells. Darius Executioner, which I play in my version, is really for like your go wide token versions, and there's a lot of that coming forward. And then we have Jinx Loose Cannon, the discard engine where you want to draw 2 every turn. I think Jinx is generally good, but discarding your hand is a really big tax, and this is partly why I think like you're just not seeing a lot of Jinx in tournaments currently. I also think that Jinx is going to be competing with Draven, who is not quite on the same game plan, but is interested in winning and getting card advantage. And I think his condition might be a bit easier to fulfill, but we'll see. Like if you're thinking about Jinx, how many cards do you have to dump quickly, and they have to be like low equity cards for you to start drawing more? It's a bit difficult to calculate, and it varies on games that go long. But let's say if you're getting 6 extra cards out of Jinx over the course of a game, that's a lot of card draw. But let's see if we can find better options out of Draven, for example. Okay. So you got like 2 spell legends, 1 big unit legend, 1 small combo play legend, and 1 card advantage legend. What does Spiritforged add to this? Right? Because this is the big question of like, these are the 4 new legends that are Fury colored, among others, and it's useful to understand what they bring to the game, right? So first up, we have Rumble, Mechanized Menace. Your mechs have Shield 1. So Rumble is going to be a on-the-ground combat deck in blue. It's a completely different way of playing from Kaisa. You actually value, for the first time in the game's history, a specific tag. And this is a good indicator that we're going to get more tags as we go forward in terms of typal, like either unit type or region typed champions. But the thing that I have with this is that Rumble looks a bit like Ari in terms of what he functionally does, right? He makes your mechs have +1 shield instead of Ari debuffing units by 1. This means that like your units are not really going to be protected for removal. And my sense is that Rumble is going to be decent if we're very much in a combat-based, like shield and assault keyword focused meta. And if we're in a spell meta, which I think we're going to be a bit less, he will not see as much play. I'm not the biggest fan, but he has some fantastic units that we're going to go through that I think are going to be pretty interesting. He's just like not my favorite, and I think that blue in general prefers its spells over its units, with the exception of Watcher, and Watcher is in the mech. So I'm a bit like iffy on Rumble, and the fact that he's in a starter deck also is like a bit of a, I don't know, like I'm having some doubts. Lucian is interesting. So the first of our equipment legends, your equipments each give assault. I think this is relatively decent. He's gonna make equipment just like better on offense, and a lot of his cards want to be cheap attacking units. There are some red units with Weapon Master, the keyword that allows you to equip a weapon for free once things enter. I think where Lucian is going to struggle is if people are fielding a lot of anti-gear removal, he's going to have some trouble. And unlike, say, Azir, he can't make units for his own equipment. And I think that's going to be a problem. In other games where you've had archetypes where you want to have a unit and have something to equip to it, or an aura-based attachment, these kinds of strategies are often prey to getting punished once you're equipping. You're paying the equip costs, and then you attack and you get blown out by a combat trick or something. It feels really bad, right? You can get like 3-for-1s, or you can just like lose a lot of tempo and burn your own runes. So I think Lucian is really going to ride or die by his signature spell, and whether or not he can actually thrive in this meta. He's a bit of an unknown to me, but my sense is that he's not as good as he first looks, unless we just like completely shift from a spell meta, even more so than Rumble. Then we have, I think, the legends that are much more competitive going forward. So we have Draven, and Draven has the clause when you win a combat, draw one, right? So already he's competing with Annie and with Jinx in terms of, like color spread. And we called out, Jinx for, let's say you get like 6 cards on average. The answer is going to be like, how many cards do you get with Draven? And the answer is probably like 6 or 7, if you take for granted that you're going to be conquering open battlefields. But you can also draw on defense. And I think that's a really important point, is that Draven, by himself, really likes fighting already. Like Draven Showboat likes having high score counts. You can play very aggressively, and you can also play through a more cleave-centric strategy or like cheap pump spells. I think, again, if that happens to be the case, you might get blown out by some like more evasive combat spells. But his ability is just generic card draw, which can never be bad, especially in a game where you have to do the thing that gets you the card draw. He, however, will not offer you extra resources for those first couple of combats. So I think he's going to be great because you have cards like Darius Trifarian and some of the new cards coming in that really reward you for fighting. I'm a big fan of Draven as a legend. I don't like aesthetically a lot of his stuff, but I think he will be solid. And I think, unfortunately, he kind of shuts the door on Jinx for now, just because of how much less conditioned he is on running bad cards to get card draw. Like, he rewards you for playing good cards by giving you more of them. I think that's fantastic. And then we have Rek'Sai, and Rek'Sai has a similar kind of ability, but not quite, right? So Rek'Sai will allow you to see the top 2 cards of your main deck when you conquer. You can play one of them, and then you recycle the rest. So you're not getting draw, you're getting card selection, and you're getting on the play advantage. Rek'Sai, I think, is slightly less good than Draven from the perspective that you have to conquer and not just defend or attack to get stuff. And you have to play them in a very specific window. So that means you have to take some combats with open energy. And if your opponents force tricks out of you, you might just reveal cards that you can't play. At which point you just have like a blank legend. And I struggle to figure out if she's going to be competitive with Darius solely on the basis of her legend ability. Her champion units, however, I think are spectacular. In particular, Red Rek'Sai that we're going to talk about, and I think that's going to be a big deal going forward for her. I do have the suspicion that Rek'Sai is going to be one of the more expensive decks to put together because both her yellow and her red legend are great, and her champion spell is, or her signature spell is fantastic also. And that's like a pretty intensive like red flag in terms of deck building. All the decks so far that have relied on their signature spells quite heavily have been expensive decks. So just like be on the lookout for that. Okay. So with that in mind, what I want to do is I want to go through the Spiritforged Fury cards and see how they work and what they compare to in the current game, what their uses are, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And I'm going to shy away from giving them hard grades now. If I was in Magic, I might do that. But right now, the game is just very young, and I don't think giving like definite grades currently is that useful until we have like a much larger pool of cards to evaluate stuff against. So, just keep track of that. So we're just going to swap over to the other client where I can show you this. All right. So this is the official Riot Games like gallery. My camera might obscure a little bit on the right side, but I'll scroll through stuff so you can see. So we're going to go through these in collector number, which is like this means we're going through commons, uncommons, rares, epics, and showcases. And we can talk through all of these, and I'll give you my opinions on these cards. So first up, we have Against the Odds. Against the Odds is a 2 energy reaction, and it gives a friendly unit at a battlefield +2 this turn for each enemy there. I don't think that this is going to be a spectacular spell for a few reasons. First off, it's more expensive than Cleave by 1, and you can't use it if there are no enemy units to like get the pump. So if you're getting hit on a battlefield, this gives you less value and it costs 1 more. Now, if we ever enter a meta that is like extremely wide board, low spell removal, so something like a full yellow Victor or Darius, or like extremely go wide Rumble, then this spell might see some uses. And the Pantheon like art gives you a sense that that might be what Pantheon's going to be about when he releases. Currently, I'm not too hot on this. It might see play, but it has like too many conditions for it to actually be a real spell and not a blank card. So I'm not too hot on it. We have Armed Assailant next. 6 might, 6 energy, 1 Fury rune cost, and then you can accelerate it for a total of 7 energy, 2 red runes, and it has Weapon Master. This I think is going to be somewhat useful in the Lucian deck, where by default, if you're attaching a weapon to it, and we're going to see some red weapons to attach to it, let's say it's getting like +1 or 2 might, you can easily see this coming in as a 8 or 9 might unit with Accelerate. We know that Accelerate units are good. Darius is good at like 7. This is going to be a big battering ram, but I think it's less good than something like Darius Trifarian, so it's like a budget option. And today I'm going to be really talking about Constructed. Once we move towards like sealed events and drafts in a couple of weeks, and we get that format stuff out, this is a card that might see some play. It's fine, and it having Weapon Master is like functionally a discount. I would only play this in Lucian and like nowhere else, and probably even there like as a 1 of or 2 of max. I don't think it's the speed that Lucian wants to be playing at, and I don't particularly like this card all that much, but we'll see. Blood Rush is, I think, one of the first super interesting cards to talk about. This is functionally a side grade to Cleave. So Cleave already gives Assault 3 for 1, and Blood Rush gives you Assault 2 for 1, but you can repeat it, so Assault 4 for 2 energy. And the question you're going to have to ask with this is, what are the average power of my units? Or the average might, what is the average might of my units? And what are the spells that I could foreseeably see coming my way? So as a good example, if you're playing something like a Pouty Poro, and you go into a combat and you're against a Kaisa player and they want to Hex Tech your Pouty Poro, well, they can't really, because if you play Blood Rush, you're going to be at Assault 4 with the Deflect of 1, and 3 damage doesn't get through. Unlike Cleave, it will not protect against Void Seeker, and unlike Cleave, it also won't trade over combat spells that give +2. So things like Solo on Guard or Discipline. So Blood Rush, I think, really lives or dies by being able to just get 1 power over, or 1 might over, a bunch of removal or a bunch of units. I do like it for its modality, and I wouldn't be surprised to see people experimenting with this over Cleave for a long while. Do be aware, however, that if you pay the additional repeat cost, my understanding is that it is actually 1 spell, and if you get countered by something like a Defy, and I do expect the green to be on the rise in the next set, you're going to be punished somewhat more than if it was just a Cleave. So keep that in mind. I do like it. Listen, the gold tokens here, so I'm going to talk about it now so we can get this out of the way. Gold tokens are going to be generated by a lot of cards in the set. I don't think red is as strong on gold. I think that's really like a blue and like orange and purple effect, although all colors are getting a little bit of gold. And they're functionally like temp seals, right? You can react to add 1 rune with them, and then you discard them. I think gold is going to be strong because it will muscle in on Kaisa's territory, and I think, again, if the equity of spells that want runes goes down a little bit, it's going to be fantastic. And you also don't need to use it for spells. You can use it for units. So I do like gold quite a lot. I think it's a fantastic resource. And I think it's a fantastic resource for cards that are cheap but have a lot of rune costs. which are like functionally, caustic to your rune base. Okay, Bushwhack. So Bushwhack is a 2 energy, 1 Fury Rune spell, and it has hidden, so you can hide out a unit, and your friendly units enter ready this turn, and you also play a gold token exhausted. I've seen a lot of discourse on this being kind of a bad card. People not understanding what you do with this, the fact that you have to kind of hide it. I actually like it a lot for effectively providing like a pseudo Darius effect. So when you're playing Darius Trifarian, often you're going to be playing him after having played another spell, or you're going to cleave into him to make him ready. Well, what if instead you were playing a high might unit that you can just bushwhack and you also get a gear token, a gold gear token? That's kind of great. And if you hide it, I think it's a bit more challenging because then you want units with ganking. I think that's the primary use for it, where you can play them into a battlefield because Bushwhack gains the Here clause when it's hidden. So I'm pretty sure that's how it works, unless I'm mistaken, and it bypasses the clause like Zonia's, but I don't think it does. So I think this is really going to be like a good 1-2 setup card, and it will give you, like, it effectively gives you back the rune it eats on the next turn in a temporary fashion. So it eats like half a rune. I don't think it's like particularly strong either with Annie or Jinx or Draven, but there are some use cases with it, and we've seen a lot of uses, for example, of like First Mate, where people are playing like 3 energy to ready something that has ganking, or to like move back and ready. So there are some things you can do with this. Although you can't just like move back from a battlefield, you have to play a unit into Bushwhack. It's fine. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. I think the decks that want this are going to play like 1 or 2 copies at most. But there is some space for this to like really have some turbo blowouts if you're playing like a big creature deck. The next couple of cards, though, are going to get real interesting, and I like them a lot. So Detonate, 1 cost, 1 rune, kill a gear, its controller draws 2. This is functionally like Hidden Blade, except that you can't hide it for gear, and there's going to be a lot of gear running around. There's going to be equipments, there's going to be gold, there's going to be baited hook decks because of the amount of death knells that are getting printed, and Aurora's still around. And there's also like Scrap Heap. Detonate has just like so much versatility. I think in particular you're going to love using it on your own Scrap Heap to draw 3, or you can use it on your own gold tokens to draw 2, and then you can use it to pop very strong gears that you don't want to see around. And especially if there's gear that is annoying on defense, and you're trying to close out a game, so something like Spirit's Refuge, you can just blow it up, and you're happy to blow up an Aurora and give them 2 cards. So I think Detonate is really good. It's, I think, marginally less good than Salvage, except that you can draw more and you can target your own stuff for value. So it has some interesting flexibility. I think this is a fantastic card. I wouldn't be surprised to see this sided as like a 2 of or a 3 of in a lot of decks, and it's going to be great. Okay, Eager Drakehound. So this card has been getting compared a lot to the Legion Rearguard. So Legion Rearguard in Origins is a 2 cost, 2 might unit that you can accelerate. So it becomes a 3 cost, 1 rune, 2 unit, and it's optional. I think Eager Drakehound is infinitely superior. I think that 1 power at that point in the game is excellent. If you look, for example, at Sneaky Deckhand, being able to be played directly to battlefields that are open, which effectively is the same thing as the Eager Drakehound, you're going to see that that is like a very valuable swing in tempo, especially early. And this makes going second a lot less bad because you can conquer first and sit on a point before your opponent can get to it. So right now, there's a lot of discussion about on the play advantage in games, and especially, for example, if you're against something like E, you can like play on the first turn. You can't play a unit to a battlefield. They get in, they get really hard to dislodge. Eager Drakehound breaks that. Red wants to be super assertive and aggressive. You can send this in with Draven and just like go on top of a 2 cost unit that was not prepared to see something like this come out. This card is amazing. I think it's going to see a lot of play, and you can also like move it into specific like weird ganking situations, or use it if there are like cards that want you to exhaust. So if we ever get like a green red spell, you can like play Eager Drakehound and exhaust it for meditation. I don't think that's going to be a use right now. I just really like this as a turn two aggressive play. I don't like it so much in Darius. I really do like it in Draven, especially. I don't like it in Rek'Sai either. So I think it has like one home, and that home is very specifically Draven. Although Annie, I think, also would be happy to like play this, burn a rune, go in, and then sit on a like 2-cost spell. And this is like a side grade sneaky deckhand, and you can run like a lot of these. It's going to be a lot of like super aggressive purple red decks for sure. Gem Jammer. Gem Jammer, 2 power, 2 energy. When you play me, give a unit ganking this turn. I think Gem Jammer is like a super cool combat trick on top of a creature. A spell that gives ganking would be open to counters, or like defies or reactions. You can react to this effect because it does go on the chain, but you can't like counter it because there are no cards currently that I'm aware of that counter activate abilities. Although I actually do think there's one in green that's coming out for the next set. So I like this. This unit actually has like +1 defense, or like the shield 1 if you're in Rumble. And I think Rumble's gonna love this card. It's probably gonna be one of the better mechs to have in your deck. And I think otherwise it's gonna be played a little bit more sparingly, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this produce some weird like pseudo jinx situations where instead of having to ride the wind, you can like play something directly into a battlefield and then like give it ganking to conquer the other battlefield. So just some tricks. I think it's like a super cool card. I just think it's like a funny looking card, but I'm a big fan. Sentinel Adept. So this card is the like brick and mortar like Lucian card, 3 might, 3 energy weapon master. It lives and dies by whether or not weapons are good, and we can sort of take a look at that because Serrated Dirk is right next to it. So like having a 3-cost unit that you can play on turn 2 if you're on or turn 1 if you're on the draw, or like if you're going second, or turn 2 if you're like going first, and you can play it and equip a weapon to it, but you have to play a weapon on turn 1. I think this is going to be like a solid card. This is like one of the cards that really makes me nervous for what I was talking about with like Hextech Ray. So you're like on Sentinel Adept, you place Serrated Dirk on 1, then on turn 2 you play Sentinel Adept, you equip it, and it gets Void Seekered, or it gets like Hextech Raid or anything, and then you're like, okay, well, I played a weapon. It's not attached to anything. I did get the free equip on it, but effectively, like, I played 2 cards to make a 4 energy, 3 assault 2, and it never gets to do anything. And then I have to like equip these manually. This is really like what makes me scared for equipment in red, whereas equipment in green and blue have like deflect on the units to protect them. I think it's like super risky. I think this unit will probably only see play in Lucian, and otherwise it won't. And I'm not even sure that it's going to see play there. I'm not a big fan. I don't like it all that much. Serrated Dirk. So Assault 2 for 1 energy. I generally don't like that this doesn't produce any kind of might in base or on defense, but it will be played in Lucian because it will become Assault 3, and you're going to want as much as much cheap equipment to attach to stuff as possible. It's like a mid-tier card, and I'm not like super hyped on it, unfortunately. Void Drone. Void Drone, 3 might for 3 energy. I cost 2 less to play anywhere from anywhere other than your hand. So this card is super interesting. It's really meant for Rek'Sai. If you see it on your first Conquer, you can play it for 1 energy effectively, and that's like a 3 might 1 energy unit. I like this. I don't think it's like fully a dead draw in the end game. Like 3 might for 3 is fine, like the Sentinel Adept, but it does like get beaten by like most removals that are in the 3 range. I think it's really going to live or die by whether or not Rek'Sai wants to be hyper assertive early or is looking for more expensive units and card selection. It's going to see a lot of play there. It's going to see play in yellow red decks that play something. Actually, no, it's really only there because you don't want baited hook for this, and Karma doesn't do anything, so you're kind of like um, just looking for it there. I think it's fine there, and I like it pretty much. And now we're moving into the uncommons. So the general power of these is probably going to go up as we go, and I'm really curious to see if there's a lot of like redeeming stuff in Fury in red. Angle shot, reaction for 2 energy. Choose a unit and equipment with the same controller, attach the equipment to that unit, or detach the equipment from that unit, draw 1. This card is spectacular. You're actually going to play this often as a sideboard card against equipment decks, even if you yourself are not an equipment deck. You can effectively like de-equip units, which is a massive blowout, and draw a card, so it replaces itself at worst. It's reaction speed, and you can also attach an equipment for free. There are some equipments that are very expensive and that have like some pretty prohibitive costs. Angle shot just lets you equip them and draw. Fantastic card. You're going to play this in every Lucian deck. You're going to play this in decks that are red that want equipment. So if Draven plays equipment, you're going to be happy, and you're going to play this in decks that are trying to counter specific equipment matchups. And if equipment is so prevalent that it is like virtually present in every deck, this might actually be a main deckable card. Otherwise, it's like a sideboard all-star, and I like it a lot. So main deck if you're an equipment deck, main deck if the meta is very equipment heavy, side deck otherwise, you're kind of happy in all 3 cases. Battering Ram. So Battering Ram has 5 might for 5 energy, and it costs 1 less for every card you play this turn to a minimum of 1. I do not like this card. So let's take a look at this, right? 5 might for 5 is pretty mediocre. It's like a real budget garbage Darius. And you can play this cheaper if you're playing like Rek'Sai and you're playing 2 units, and then you conquer and you flip this, and all of a sudden it costs 3 for 5. It really only has a home there, I think, and not much else, not much elsewhere, because it requires you to play a lot of cards to board and kind of tap out to get the maximum value out of its energy discount. I just don't like this card. I think it's kind of like Legion Core. It's also like a Darius card if you're not playing Hook Darius, which is really the dominant version. If somebody finds a use for this, I'm gonna be like pleasantly surprised. But right now, I'm not like a believer in this. Blast Core Cadet, Jesus. 2 might for 2 energy. You can pay an additional 1 and recycle a Fury Rune as an initial cost. If you do that, you get a 2 ping. Fantastic card. This is a card that especially like does not benefit from being played in Kaista because it's not a spell. But if you're looking at a unit that can just like ping something on a battlefield and swing a combat your way, I think this is like a fantastic card that has a lot of flexibility. I would play this in most aggressive red decks or decks that are assertive. You can play it on 2. If you're stuck on the draw, you can counter the first play. This is like another one of those cards that I think is going to balance out the first player advantage. And I do think that you're going to love this in something like Draven. You're going to love it into something like Darius. You're going to like it a little bit less for Rek'Sai and Annie, for example. But in general, this is just like a very solid, low-to-the-ground, flexible card that has like an additional ping on it. Just great stuff. I'm a big fan. Minotaur Reckoner. So this is an interesting card. 5 might, 5 energy, units can't move to base. So this is a functional counter to Reaver's Row, which is really strange because you actually can't target Reaver's Row pre-game unless you just expect it to be played in virtually every Conquer deck. This is an anti-Conquer card. It blocks your own units from leaving, so it's like a Vile Moss layer on a body. Has 5 might, so it does like get, Falling Starred out, but you like whatever, that happens to a lot of units. I think this is a card that punishes heavy conquer decks and forces some like really awkward fights. I think this card is going to be really good if Irelia or Yasuo, if we're being honest, if Irelia is a top deck, which I do suspect it will be, and if Sivir is a top deck, which I do expect it will be. It effectively like prevents using Ride the Wind to go back to base. You have to use it to go into another battlefield, which means you need some like pretty tricky setups to force something to fight the Minotaur Reckoner. I like it reasonably well. I think its options for what it's trying to hit are fairly narrow. It like hits Sivir, MF, Set, and Irelia and Yasuo. So like a lot of purple leaning or orange leaning cards that use ready to move back to base. It will, however, I think like really penalize a lot of the Annie strats, and that's good. That's really like its primary home. I think, for example, this unit, I should check, but this unit might actually block Zonias, in which case I'm actually not sure how the sequencing works. But there are a lot of savior units by bringing them back to base right now. Flash does that, Zonias does that, Ride the Wind does that, Fight or Flight does that. So this is like an anti-purple tech card. But if purple becomes like super prevalent, then this is like fine, and you're happy to play it in a very like assertive hold based deck. Okay, Perched Rimworm. So play me only to a battlefield you conquered this turn. This card is like a quintessential Rek'Sai card, which is only really good in a specific range of energy like that you can get. So if you see this on a like turn 2 conquer into an open battlefield, it's like an incredible blowout. I'll give you an example. You play the 2-cost minion that allows you to cycle through an additional card that we're going to see in a second. You're on the play. You go second, you conquer, Rek'Sai's ability triggers, you see this, you play a 5 might unit, you suddenly have like 7 might to that battlefield. That is pretty big. It's also like pretty impossible to just break with one card. So I like it, but its range of like activity is very low, and I'm not sure that you can like really count on this in the late game where it just effectively is a dead card. I think it has like incredible blowout scenarios like 10% of the time and is almost unplayable in 90% of the times, which makes this a card that I would not play if I could avoid it. The one energy discount for the one might is not sufficient for this to be that useful. If it was like 3 energy, I think I would be more in on it, or if it had an additional might, maybe probably break the card then. But I think this is just like too narrow and dangerous to play, and it will just like break your hands if you draw it at the wrong time and you can't select through it. Imagine you're like in top deck mode at the end of the game and you draw this. Awful. Recurve Bow. 2 energy equipment, equipped for 1 Fury rune. When I attack or defend, deal 2 to an enemy here. Fantastic. This is like this I think is just way better than the Dirk. You don't get the boost, and it costs 1 more, but it deals pre-combat damage. This will swing fights. If you're on Lucian, it gives you accelerate. I think even in other decks you would be happy playing it, but this is like I probably like a 2 or 3 of in Lucian decks. And it works on defense as well, which is like really the kind of like the salt in the wound for the Dirk, which is only assault. This becomes like attack deal 2, defend deal 2, assault 1. Fantastic. I would play this in almost. I certainly play this, I think, as a playset in Lucian, and I think I would play this as like a one of in a lot of other decks that want to be fighting a lot. So Draven, especially, I think, is going to like this card. And you can reasonably play it in like Darius as well. So like you're on turn 1, you're second to go, and you play this into Noxus Hopeful and you burn the rune to equip it, and next turn you have a 4 might unit that hits for 2 on attack. Sick stuff. I really like this. Sudden Storm. 3 energy. It can be hidden. It's an action. Deal 2 damage to a unit on a battlefield. If it's attacking, deal 4 damage to it. Oh. So the comp to this is something like Fight or Flight, but it's less flexible because it can't save your own units. However, it will remove something. I think this is a spectacular Annie card, and we were talking about spells that aren't rune heavy but are in fact cost heavy. I think the flexibility of this having hidden is pretty sweet as well. And then, yeah, it can ping. Well, if you hide it, it can only ping at the battlefield that it's hidden, and that means that it's almost always going to be used for the if it's attacking clause. But otherwise, you can just like pre-ping a unit for 3. I think you're more happy using it as a counter trick or as a hidden card, but it's pretty solid, and I think this is going to see some play for sure. 4 damage is a good breakpoint. I'm pretty much a fan. And the last uncommon is Void Hashling. So I saw a post, I think on the subreddit, about somebody else who was doing card reviews. I can't remember who, and the Void Hatchling was like rated an F. I think that's completely the opposite. I think Void Hatchling is like a spectacular card. It has a limited range of decks, but those decks it's just going to be played as a 3-0 forever. So Rek'Sai wants 3 Void Hatchlings for sure. And if you're playing Baited Hook, you also want Void Hatchlings. And if you're ever playing anything with Karma or Vision units, you also want Void Hatchling. This card is crazy. Card selection that is repeatable and that will increase the range of cards that you can see and double check before is just like really good. If this card read like 2 mana, 2 energy, 2 might for Vision 1, which is the Mystic Poro, it would already be great. But if you're playing this in like a Nocturne purple red deck, this card is crazy. It's good with it increases the range of Baited Hook to like 6 cards, which is invaluable, and then it increases the range of Rek'Sai's legend ability to 3 cards. This card is crazy. I think this card is going to see an enormous amount of play in the decks that want it. Not really outside of that, but it is like an all-star in those decks. And it has not just one archetype, it's just going to be interested in everything that reveals the top of your deck. This also works with Stack Deck, which is a card that is seeing an enormous amount of play. This is just great. I'm a big fan of this. Its only downside is that it dies to removal and it's got 2 might. But for anything that is like dealing with card selection on top of your deck, this card is like amazing. Spectacular stuff. Assembly Rig. So Assembly Rig is the first of our rares. It's a 4 energy gear, and it costs. It has an ability also for 1 and a Fury Rune to recycle a unit from your trash to play a 3-cost mech unit to your base. This card is effectively like the first time you play it, it needs to take 5. So it'll cost 4 plus 1 plus 1 recycled rune to make a 3-cost unit, and you need to recycle to your base. So this is a you need to recycle a unit from your trash, and then it goes to your base. This is a Rumble card. I'm not sure that you would like it much anywhere else, although maybe in like a Jinx deck or something that's like very graveyard loaded, but it has like anti-synergy with Vi. On the first play, I think it's incredibly bad. 3 might, 4, 5, and recycle is terrible. If you use it twice, you're on 6 energy and 2 burnt runes for 3. And if you use it 3 times, you're on 7 energy and 3 burnt runes for 9. So you need to use it 3 times for it to, I think, be cost positive, with the exception of like if you have an enormous amount of wide board buffs for Rumble. I think it'll see like limited play in like very slow matchups that don't run gear removal, and that's about it. This card looks pretty awful to me, and kind of like a trap. I know the dream is there to just like keep making 3-cost mechs, but otherwise it's like I don't think it's it. And it makes them to base too. You don't even get to select where you put them. And then the boy, Draven. So we have the regular art and the showcase, Draven Vanquisher. So this is the second Draven hero. There's going to be a purple Draven once we do the Chaos cards in like a couple weeks. So 4 might, 4 energy. When I win a combat, play a gold gear. When I attack or defend, you may pay 1, so you can sacrifice the gold to give him +2. So this card does not have Accelerate, and it requires winning combats to have the gear that you can then use to play for the rune, but you can pay for the rune reasonably well. This is a card that I think will. I think it'll see play in Draven, although I think I like Purple Draven more, even though Purple Draven's like an insane card. I think making gold is kind of like a sweet ability, and you can also just buff him to be like a 6 might for 4 and a red rune, which is good. Like we're seeing how Darius Trifarian can punch above his weight by playing a second card. I think burning a rune is less. I would qualify burning one rune as less than a card's worth, so he actually costs a little bit less to get going than Darius Trifarian. But he can't ready as aggressively, so he's going to want to sit on a point, and that indicates to me that like Draven's going to be pretty happy holding points as well as taking them. I do like this card quite a bit, and I think as a gold producer, it's also going to have some like niche cases where you just want the gold tokens. But yeah, he's self-fueling, so it's kind of great. I do like him. I don't know if you're always gonna play him as your chosen champion, but my sense is that yes, because kind of like Leona, having access to him on 4 with 4 might makes him reasonably hard to remove, and then he can like start swinging like pretty hard on the next turn. So I like this a lot. Ferris Forerunner. So this card, I think it's partly why the previous gear that we were talking about looks so bad to me. Ferris Forerunner is a 6 might, 6 cost unit with 1 energy, and it has Death Knell make 3 2/2 tokens. This card is crazy. This card is 12 might stapled onto a 6 cost with 1 burn. It punishes opponents for removing it. It has shield 1 because you're almost always going to be playing this in Rumble. I also think you're just going to be playing this in Hook. This card looks crazy to me as like a Hook top end. I like it for Darius, for that deck specifically, but I also like it a lot for Rumble. I also kind of like it for Draven as like a top end as well. I think this card is just spectacular. And if your opponent is ever forced to like remove this with a Killing Blade, you're gonna feel so good. You're gonna get like 2/3/3s back that each have shield 1 in your base, and then you can like use them to like go somewhere else. And then you're also gonna get cards. This card is crazy. As an example, right? You play this, and your opponent Falling Stars it. You've paid 4 more energy than they have. If they're on Kaisa, you're on parity for runes. If they're not, you've also like you're up a 1 rune burn, and then you still get 2 more 3/3s. Crazy. This card also is one of the really scary cards to consider with Karthus in a Hook deck, which I think is looking a lot more likely for the next set. If you're ever in a situation where somebody has to like either kill the Karthus or make this produce 4 3 might units, or if you hook this into like a Harness Dragon or anything that's slightly its same size or above it, this card is going to be absolutely nuts. And I think you're going to see this played a lot more than you might think outside of Rumble. I'm a big fan of this card, certainly. Longsword. So 2 energy, 1 Fury Rune for +2 might. It has quick draw and it has equip. So quick draw is the new keyword for equipment. It has a reaction. When you play it, you attach it to a unit control. So it's like inverse Weapon Master, which means you get to effectively like pay 2 and equip it, but you can't. My sense is that the quick draw itself is not reaction speed. Like the weapon is not reaction speed. The equipment action is reaction speed. So like your equip cost, which means like you can't play this as like a spell as a counter. I like it less than I like the bow. I do like the fact that it has 2 generic might though, and I think that's going to be very serviceable in the equipment deck. You're probably like playing like 3 of these and 3 of the bow if you're playing Lucian. I think there's like a very good like 1 cost orange equipment. I do like it. And I think if you're not playing units with Weapon Master, Quick Draw becomes infinitely more useful, which I think is the case for like Red Lucian. So, you know, I'm kind of in. Piercing Light. This card is, I think, going to be the subject of a lot of discussion. So 2 energy, 1 rune to deal 2 damage to a battlefield, and then 2 damage to 1 other unit. Notice, 1 unit has to be out of battlefield, the other one does not. But the clause where you have to hit another unit is dependent on the first one. So you need a unit on a battlefield to target, and then you can target something else. You can't double target the same unit, which is a bit different. It also is not a reactive, like a reflexive trigger, like Falling Star. So this card reads like 2 and a rune, which in Kaisa effectively means like 2. Deal 2 damage to a unit at battlefield, 2 at another unit. And then you can like double it up and pay that extra rune, or 2 runes if you're not on Kaisa to deal either 4 ticks of 2 damage to 2 units on a battlefield, which means you can do like 2 2 2 2 or 4 2 2 or 4 and 4. It has a lot of flexibility. I think it's a good card. I think it's just going to be like hammered by the amount of deflect that's coming into the meta. But if Kaisa stays good, Piercing Light is amazing, and you're going to use it a lot. It is spell speed. So unlike something like Hextech Ray, you can't use it like as a showdown ability, and I think that does harm it somewhat. I still think this is a good card. It's just like too flexible to not be at least decent into some decks. It's just going to be a question of like how dominant green and orange and purple are as colors. Rel Magnetic, 4 might, 4 energy. It has tank, and when you attack, you can play an equipment with energy cost no more than 2, ignoring its cost and attaching. I think Rel is like an automatic 3 of in Lucian. This card effectively plays 6 plus the equipment cost directly to it. If you're, for example, using the bow, it means that you're like dealing the 2 damage. If you're playing the sword, it's a little bit like wasted on the quick draw, but you're still happy to use it. There's a world where this like attacks and then is like its effect goes on the chain, and then you get like Void Seeker, and it feels like pretty bad. But I think this is going to be like really useful for Lucian, and I think that's about it. It is action compression more than it is card advantage, so you're going to want this in like very aggressive decks and not at all in slow ones. Is my sense. Rengar Pouncing. I love Rengar Pouncing. So 3 might, 3 energy, 1 red rune. Reaction, you can play it at reaction speed. You can play it to a battlefield that you are attacking directly, and then it has Assault 2, which makes it like a 5 cost combat trick for 3. Rengar Pouncing is great. You cannot counter magic Rengar Pouncing. He's like cleave plus, but also sticks around after for an additional 3. I think this card is great. I think this card is going to be played in Draven. I think it's going to be played in like a range of decks that just want high creature counts. So like you can, this is serviceable in hook decks, which try to run some amount of cleaves, and now you're just going to be able to play Rengar, not for the combat purposes of like buffing a unit necessarily, but you can just like play him as a combat action, and you can also play him as a reaction, as a defensive tool. So he effectively should he's kind of like half Shen, half Cleave, so he reads like +3 on defense, +5 on attack. Just like a spectacular card. I think this guy is great and is really scary for sure. And then we have the first of the champion unit Rumbles. So Rumble Hot-Headed. He has the opposite clause of your legend. So for assault, for 4 energy, your mechs have assault, so +1. And whenever he conquers, you may recycle another friendly unit to play a mech from your trash. My understanding, if I'm reading this correctly, is that the unit has to be on your board, so it's not inside of your trash, and it returns a trashed mech. But for example, you can play this with the Ferris 6 cost mech, recycle one of the tokens, which will then leave the battlefield, and then bring it back, which is pretty scary. You do have to pay the cost of the unit that you're recycling, but this is gonna like really allow you to turbocharge some of the mechs that have death knells or enter the battlefield abilities. He's like fine. I'm not so hot on Rumble, but I think he's like a reasonable like champion unit. Has like a lord ability. He makes your mechs a bit more threatening in general. 4 is like a nice break point. It's not perfect. I think in general I would like much prefer 5 and 7. but he I think is like pretty useful, and he does buff himself, so he is actually like 5 on attack, which is not irrelevant. You can also play like a Gem Jammer turn 1, and then play him on turn 2, and you have like effectively like a Daring Poro mech. So you know, I think he will probably be the one that's in the champion zone most of the time because he's a reliable turn 2 play, and I do like that certainly. His alternate art, which I think is pretty sick. And then we have Dunebreaker. So now we're moving into our epic cards. Dunebreaker is a 7 might for 7 energy and 1 fury rune. If you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand, I enter ready, and when you hold, draw 2. Dunebreaker is crazy. 7 might is a fantastic breakpoint. He's good in the Rek'Sai deck as like a later game top deck, and you can filter him out early. He's good in Draven because a 7 might unit that wants to hold a battlefield will just draw you units. He's also good in Jinx for whatever it's worth because you can play him at readied speed, which makes him like a 7 cost accelerated unit that will hold for 2. I think Dunebreaker is just like a fantastic card. It's going to see play not in Lucian, but basically in Draven, Jinx, Rek'Sai, and perhaps an Annie as like a beater that can hold, and then you're like sitting behind some runes and you can get him to hold by like fight or flighting opponent units. This card is great. Do not sleep on this card. I don't think it's like a 3 of because of how expensive it is, but it's great otherwise. Then we have the first champion unit, Lucian. So Lucian Gunslinger, 3 mana, 2 might, no rune recycling, assault 1, and when I attack, deal damage equal to my assault to an enemy here. And if you equip him, his legend ability will also give whatever weapon he's using assault to. And if you're using the bow, for example, he can like ping for 2, then the bow will ping for 2, and then he'll also have like 4 attack. So Lucian is an incredibly assertive champion. I think he's an auto 3 of in his own deck. He's definitely going to be the champion that you want in the zone. I think playing him open as like a turn 2 play is pretty awful. So he definitely wants like a first player advantage. So you can play a weapon, then play him on 2, equip the weapon, attack, blow out whatever's there. Or if you're playing like the sword, you can also just like make him a 4 cost defender or 5 might unit. He's solid. I'm still like reticent because of how I feel about equipment in red specifically, but he will be like the core of the Lucian deck if that's what you're looking to play, almost certainly. And I think he is like way better than the common cost 3 might weapon master that we were looking at earlier. So that's my shout. And now we have Red Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai Breacher, 3 might for 3, it has accelerate, so it can be a 3 might accelerated unit for 4 and a red rune. It has assault 1, so if you're accelerating it, it actually has 4 might, and friendly units played from anywhere other than the player's hand have accelerate. This card is unreal. The yellow Rek'Sai you want in the deck actually, and not in the champion zone because of how it's worded. This card is crazy. You can play this on 3 and sit it at base, and it will become a 4 cost. You can play this on turn 2 if you're the opening player. I actually like this being second because you can play it at 3, not accelerate. Then next turn you go in for 4, and if you reveal a unit and you conquer a battlefield and you reveal like a unit that is reasonably big and that you can play for 4 mana, then you can accelerate that unit. Which, for example, like the 5 might 4 cost dragon, this card is going to produce some crazy blowouts and like some board states early on that are going to feel even worse than people who are randoming into like Nocturne. It is 100% a casino deck, but it works really well. And I think Rek'Sai is also going to be an auto 3 of in hook decks, which are going to get accelerate from anything that they play, which is unreal. Mass accelerate is like cannot be overstated as like a boon, and the fact that it is itself like an on rate unit with accelerate is spectacular. Like this game is going to win from surprise top decks, it's going to win from its own legend ability, it's just going to be absolutely crazy. And then the final epic that's only in red is Skyfall of Arion. which is +2 for 3 might. It has an equip of 2, or 1 energy, 1 fury rune, and it turns conquer effects into hold effects and vice versa. I think this card is great in Lucian. I think it's great in Draven, where some of your conquer effects are going to be like super useful. Especially like Purple Draven loves this card, and I think there is going to be some like crazy stuff you can do. Like you can equip this to a Kiana if you're playing Lucian. Uh, what else do you want for this? I'm trying to think like what are like some great conquer effects. Red Kaisa just draws 2 off of this. Kiana draws 2 off of this. And then yeah, we should like do a list at some point to see what it hits. I think this is like a reasonably good equipment that is going to have a home in some very specific decks. It's a bit overrate compared to the longsword, but the decks that want this are really going to want this, and there's going to certainly be some like weird abusive strategies where you can duplicate hold or conquer effects across turns. So yeah, I'm going to go really quickly to the signature spells for the heroes, for the legends that are in Fury, because they're, I think, relevant to this discussion. So first up, we have Rumble's Danger Zone. So 1 energy, 1 rune, reaction. You can repeat it, so you can play it a second time for 2 and 2. Give your mechs +2. You're probably going to want to run like 1 or 2 of these in Mechanized Menace decks. This is a lot like Victor's Power Siphon, but only for your mechs. However, you can use it to counter spells that are going to try to blow out your units. So for example, this like interacts very positively into Cathian Rain as like for like a 2 cost to burn counter spell. It's also like a functional like board buff. I actually really like this. I wouldn't be surprised to see like 3 of in a deck, although I'm a bit reticent to like go all the way, because I think if you just draw these and no max, it can be a bit of a downer. Otherwise, I really like it. I think it's like a fantastic signature spell for Rumble. Lucian's is Relentless Pursuit. 2 energy, 1 red or orange rune. Action, so you can play during your turn of showdowns. You move a friendly unit, you attach an equipment, and then it has when I conquer, you may move me to my base. So effectively, this moves a unit but doesn't exhaust it, and it attaches an equipment to it, and then it can move back to base, right? So it offers you a free conquer, and then you can go back. This card is crazy if you're playing like Red Kaisa or Kiana, because it effectively replaces itself if you have an open battlefield to draw from. It can also just like recycle its rune if you don't want to draw, although I do think the draw is better. And you can also equip specific items to certain units and then just like really go ham. So one of the things that you can do with this is effectively like play Darius Trifarian, then play Relentless Pursuit. It's going to ready him. It goes into a battlefield. It conquers. It probably has like 9 or 10 might, depending on your equipment. Goes back to base, can conquer the second battlefield. Spectacular card. Lucian's going to want like 3 of these, certainly 2. It looks a lot like Showstopper and Zenith Blade to me, which means, you know, prepare your wallets if Lucian is any good, and even if he's not, prepare your wallet, because this is going to be a very popular selection for him. Just a fantastic card. Draven's got Spinning Axe. It's an equipment, not the only one, but one of the few. 3 might for 2 energy and 1 red or purple rune. It has quick draw, so you can auto equip it. And then it has an equipment of any rune, and it is temporary, so it only lasts for 1 turn. But it is effectively like a buff that you can like play and then sequence into a unit. However, it only has temporary if it is unattached. So long as you keep it attached to Draven, it is or whatever other unit you're using. This is an above cost buff. We were talking earlier about things like Cleave or the new pump spell that has like +4. This is like 3 for +1, but it's permanent and it works on offense and defense. I think Spinning Axe is great. It stacks. It becomes temporary. The reason why temporary is a bit brutal for it is if you get your unit removed, it will die at the start of your turn unless you can like find a way to re-equip it at reaction speed or action speed, which I don't think is really possible, as far as I know. And it really goes into Draven's like high risk, high reward gameplay, where if you win combats and you draw, it stays on the board, and then Purple Draven will also give you extra points. I like it. I think it would probably be like the only equipment I would play in a Draven deck. And then I would play like 2 or 3. Certainly, if you're playing it, you want to draw it. You don't want to like only have one of these. And then the final spell that we're going to talk about today is Void Rush, which is Rek'Sai's signature spell. 2 energy, 1 rune. Reveal the top 2 cards of your main deck. You may play one of them, reducing its cost by 2. Draw any you did not play this way. This card is absurd. It's 2 mana to draw 2. You don't need to be on a battlefield. You don't need to have conquered, and you can play one of them for free. So it is at worst 2 energy and 1 rune to draw 2, but it can also ramp you by 2. If you reveal Yellow Rek'Sai as your second card, it will actually also give you another 2 energy, allowing you to play a 4-cost unit for free. This card is absurd. Red and yellow are generally wanting for card draw, and this card gives it to you, and Rek'Sai allows you to cycle it through or have it on hand whenever you would like. It's just fantastic. Play all of them. And Rek'Sai is looking to be good, so this is probably going to be like a very expensive spell, and my advice to you, if you're watching this and you're like thinking prospectively, like, should I go in on this? If you want to play Rek'Sai, I would get these when they're cheap, if you can find them. So honestly, like if they're going for like $20, I would just buy a playset. And then they might go up if Rek'Sai is competitive. They might go down, but I think this is going to be one of those cards that is just like perennially run in Rek'Sai decks, as long as Rek'Sai continues to be a legend that people are playing. So fantastic stuff. Now, I want to like take a minute to sort of think through a lot of the stuff that we've seen. I think there are some wide board buffs, and there are some straight damage spells and a lot of equipment and some buffs. I think the buff cards, or things like Rengar, you can be reasonably sure are going to be good. I think some of the ping spells are really going to be dependent on Deflect, and I think Deflect is going to become a big issue in the next season of this game. And then I think anything that is like specific to Rumble, specific to Rek'Sai, or like specific to Lucian is going to be sort of based on how competitive those decks are and how much you want, how many copies of those that you want. There are some cards though that I'm just like super excited to talk about. So I'm trying to assess certain cards that I'm going to be interested in, and these are recommendations for you. I'm trying to not get like caught out now in terms of what I want to be playing when the next set comes forward. And I tend to target deck types that I like and that I think are going to be reasonably good. So I'm a bit like skeptical about Lucian, even though I really like Lucian as a hero. But I think some of the cards that I'm going to show you are really cards that I'm excited for, and I think are going to, be interesting to think through in the next meta. So Void Hatchling, I mentioned. I think this card's going to have a lot of homes. It's going to be super cool, and I really love the card advantage, or the card selection that it offers you. I think it's great. I think Rengar Pouncing is spectacular. This is a card that I'm going to love to play in a bunch of decks, but I'm specifically super interested in it for Legion Darius, like Go Wide Darius, because you can use Darius's Legion energy to play this if you've played another unit before. So it's going to have some interesting reaction with accelerate units and certain spells. So I'm just super excited. I think Rengar is going to be a choice unit for a lot of decks for sure. Skyfall of Arian is more the kind of card that I'm interested in. My favorite legend is Pantheon, so I'm semi-mentally preparing for when Pantheon's in the game. But I think the duality of hold and conquer effects is going to be super interesting. I think you're going to probably jam this in certain kinds of decks that are not necessarily Lucian decks, and you're going to be pretty happy about it. Something like Kaisa or Darius. Well, Darius not so much. Kaisa, certainly you're gonna love drawing 2 cards off of this, but anything that is hold based is also gonna be pretty interesting, and I'm gonna have a great time playing this. And then Perched Grimworm is interesting. I know it was a bit mid on it, and I think it has some pretty awful fail states. I'm actually not interested in playing it in Kaisa, not Kaisa, in Rek'Sai, I'm actually interested in playing it in Volibear. And non-Aurora Volibear is a deck that I think is going to get better over time. It's also a dragon, so it can be played even cheaper if you're playing Herald of Scales, which is really only like the only red and orange color combinations are Lucian and Volibear. And I think in that deck it makes a lot more sense, right? So if you're playing like a 5 might 2-cost unit that ramps you by 1 exhausted rune, there we're starting to have a bit of a different discussion, and I think that's going to be its home. And once we get like more dragon support, this card might be interesting. I'm like, I don't think it's a good card, but I'm interested to try stuff out with it. So, you know, keep this in mind. These are like cards that I'm like feeling a bit. But I will be honest, Fury is not my favorite color, so I'm a bit biased in terms of how I'm evaluating cards, as is everyone who evaluates cards, by the way. But I would recommend, taking a look at these and seeing what catches your eye. And I'm curious if I missed any interactions or like cool pocket combos that you can find right now. So yeah, that's going to be it for like the first of these color reveals. And really, I wanted to do the opening segment that was on the Houston qualifier to like talk about how I'm evaluating some of these cards and why I'm a bit lower on spells going forward, given that Kaisa's meta share is also declining already. I think cards like Lucian and cards like the Void stuff or like Rek'Sai are really broadening what you can do with Fury, which I think is fantastic. And I think it's going to be the case for all the colors. So I'm excited to sort of move on to the next color, which is going to be green. I'm just going through them in order of how they're listed. And we're going to get to like see, I think when we get to green, why I'm a bit more skeptical of like red spot removal. But I'm just really curious to see what's going to happen with the meta, and I think some of these like assertive non-spell based decks are going to be pretty cool. Yeah. Next episode is going to be the Yasuo in Focus. This fantastic top 64 deck by Gale Wins that did reasonably well at the Houston event. And I want to talk about where Yasuo sits in the current game and where I see things changing in the next couple of months. That's going to be it for today. And well, we've already started discussing Spiritforged. Next week, we continue discussing Spiritforged. That's going to be it. Have a nice one.